The Spanish colonization of the Americas began in 1493 on the Caribbean island of Hispaniola, now Haiti, and the Dominican Republic after the initial 1492 voyage of Genoese mariner Christopher Columbus under license from Queen Isabella I of Castile. These overseas territories of the Spanish Empire were under the jurisdiction of Crown of Castile until the last territory was lost in 1898. Spaniards saw the dense populations of indigenous peoples as an important economic resource, and the territory claimed as potentially producing great wealth for individual Spaniards and the crown. Religion played an important role in the Spanish conquest and incorporation of indigenous peoples, bringing them into the Catholic Church peacefully or by force. The crown created civil and religious structures to administer the vast territory. Spanish men and women settled in greatest numbers where there were dense indigenous populations and the existence of valuable resources for extraction. 1. The Spanish Empire claimed jurisdiction over the New World in the Caribbean and North and South America, with the exception of Brazil, ceded to Portugal by the Treaty of Tordesillas. Other European powers, including England, France, and the Dutch Republic, took possession of territories initially claimed by Spain. Although the overseas territories under the jurisdiction of the Spanish crown are now commonly called colonies, the term was not used until the second half of the 18th century. The process of Spanish settlement, now called colonization, and the colonial era are terms contested by scholars of Latin America 234 and more generally 5. It is estimated that during the period 1492–1832, a total of 186 million Spaniards settled in the Americas, and a further 35 million immigrated during the post-independence era 1850–1950. The estimate is 250,000 in the 16th century and most during the 18th century, as immigration was encouraged by the new Bourbon dynasty. 6. The indigenous population plummeted by an estimated 80% in the first century and a half following Columbus's voyages, primarily through the spread of infectious diseases. Practices of forced labor and slavery for resource extraction, and forced resettlement in new villages and later missions were implemented. 7. Alarmed by the precipitous fall in indigenous populations and reports of settlers' exploitation of their labor, the Crown put in place laws to protect their newly converted indigenous vassals. Europeans imported enslaved Africans to the early Caribbean settlements to replace indigenous labor, and enslaved and free Africans were part of colonial-era populations. A mixed-race casta population came into being during the period of Spanish rule. In the early 19th century, the Spanish-American Wars of Independence resulted in the secession of most of Spanish America and the establishment of independent nations. Continuing under Crown rule were Cuba and Puerto Rico, along with the Philippines, which were all lost to the United States in 1898 following the Spanish-American War, ending its rule in the Americas.